Hello, 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 my beautiful sisters in ministry out there. It is your sister, Reverend Jocelyn, and I'm here with another episode of Impact Women. And every week, I'm so honored to have the opportunity to have a great conversation with dynamic women of God who are changing the world. And they're changing the world leading by their faith and the fact that they are purpose driven. And so, yet again, I have the opportunity today to interview another dynamic woman. Now, before I introduce her to the show, let me share a little bit about myself. Again, my name is Reverend Jocelyn. Let me get my name out. My name is Reverend Jocelyn Jones, and I am the founder of Women in the Ministry. And Women in the Ministry is an organization that's committed to helping women who are called to ministry to answer that call and to build transformative ministries that go beyond the walls of the church. And so if you are a sister who's watching right now and you know that you're called to start a ministry, then I encourage you to visit our website at womenintheministry.com to learn more about the great work that we are doing. But let's talk about great women. I am about to interview a woman who is a sister, a friend, a colleague who we're doing great work together in the trauma healing space. But as I got a chance to learn more about her bio, I was like, I need to have you on my show because she's done such amazing work as it relates to missions. And so Shamika White, U.S. Navy veteran, is a selfless veteran, a depression survivor, a loving mother. And yes, she is such a loving mother, a faithful friend, and an author. She is a missionary who's traveled to Mexico, the Dominican Republic, Honduras 3 times to provide dental care to the underserved communities. As United States Navy veteran who served alongside the United States Marines during Operations Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraq Freedom, Ms. White served as a chaplain assistant, providing combat stress support to active duty members and their spouses. After 17 years of delivering care to the underserved and providing dental care to the veteran community, she retired. But her journey of service continues. This journey led her to start 2 organizations, the Blue Unveil and Eye Care Collection, which focuses on depression awareness. Shamika published her first book titled Shattered, Journaling Through the Pain for Healing, a 21-day devotional where she introduces the readers to master repairman, better known as Jesus. I love that. I love that. Currently, Ms. White is working on her second book while serving as a women's veterans coordinator for the MVI Vet Her program. She's the ministry lead of New Life Covenant Southeast Veteran Ministry and a Zumba and trampoline exercise instructor offering trampoline classes. I need to take her up on that. So, Shamika, I'm going to talk to you later. But yes, welcome to the show, Shamika White. And let's blow up in the chat, make some noise for those who are watching live. We absolutely want to hear from you. Welcome, Shamika.
Hey, Jocelyn.
Hey, I was truly looking forward to this interview because as I was reading your bio, I was like, wait, she did what? She did what? Oh. so let's talk about this. So you have such a rich history of serving across the world. And this started when you were 19 years old in the Navy. So let's talk about what drew you to this kind of work.
Yes. So first of all, Jocelyn, thank you so much for having me. Like, this is just phenomenal, right? Mind blowing. So thank you so much for having me. So what drew me to missions, right? I had no idea this was the work that I was going to do, you guys. Joining the military, they only offered me 2 positions, 2 jobs. The first job was undesignated, and the other job was a chaplain's assistant. And so I sat there in the MEPS, which is the Military Interest Processing Station. And I sat there and I said, well, God, I guess it's going to be me and you. But I had no idea what I was in store for. And so when I got to Japan, my chaplain, Chaplain McInnes, he was phenomenal. And he started giving me missions. And he will literally say, I have a mission for you.
Wow. So he said it. I have a mission for you, and you accepted. And were you scared when it was put out there? You looked at me like, what? What does that mean?
Yes, I was absolutely afraid. So the first mission he gave me, we were literally doing like a 5 or 6 mile hike, right? The Marines are they're on another level. Okay. So we're like doing like this 5, 6 mile hike. And our base was literally right under Mount Fuji. And so as we were hiking, he was like, what is that building over there? And so after the hike, he doubled back and we found out that it was an orphanage, right? It was tucked behind all of these woods and bushes right under Mount Fuji in Japan. And so he was like, we have to go over there. We have to scout out the land. Like, this is crazy. I was like, okay. And so I went with him, and we found out it was so many children in Japan that was in his orphanage, right? And you never hear about that. And so we went inside and we wanted to know what did they need. They didn't have a playground. The kids didn't come outside to play, and so we built the playground for them. We partnered with the Navy Seabees. Big shout out to everyone who served as a Navy Seabee. That's our construction team for the Navy. We partnered with them, and we got some Marines out, and we hooked them up with a playground. It was so phenomenal, and they literally had this school bus on their ground, a torn down school bus, and the Seabees welded that thing down and did what they need to do. And we created a playground out of this school bus. It was crazy. And so that was fun, right? But that second mission, he said, I have a mission for you. And I was like, what? And he was like, you're not going to like this one. And I said, okay, sir, what is this? And he said, I'm going to send you into the prison, into the Japanese brig, where they are holding 5 military servicemen there. And I want you to go in there and talk to them. I said,
like, you talking to me? You talking to me? I know that was your
face. I said, no, sir. No. That's your job. No, you do that. You take care of that. And I could not sleep. Like, the whole time he drove me to the brig, just so I can see the brig. I got outside our van and I just stood in front of the brig like, God, really? And I got back in the van. He's like, are you okay? And I was like, no, not really. But then weeks later, I came back in my whites and I had been praying the whole time. I didn't know how to pray. I was just talking to God at that time, right? Like, God, I need you to help me. I'm not sure what this is about. I signed up to be in the Navy, not to go to these prisons and talking to the people. Like, what is this? And when we arrived, he was like, I'm going to park the car and you go inside. I said, park the car. What? You leaving me? But I was so afraid. I was petrified. Okay. It was horrible. And so I went inside and it was 5 service members. I think it was like 3 Army, 1 Navy, 1 Marine Corps, and or 3 Navy, 1 Army, and Marine Corps, something like that. And I was the first woman that they had seen in 3 to 5 years. Yes, 3 to 5 years. And I walked through that brig, very courageous. They did not know that I was afraid. I couldn't let them know that I was afraid. I walked in there and I sat with those men, one at a time. They did not come all together, one at a time. So I was there for a few hours and they told me things that they never told the judge. And I asked them, like, why would you tell me all these things? And the chaplain literally sat on the other side of the wall. So he left me in the room with them by myself because he wanted to see, he had been visiting them on his own, but he wanted to see, would they open up to me? And they did. They told me things they never shared with him. They told me things that they never shared with the judge. And probably after the 3rd service member, I wanted more. I said, let's do this again.
Wow. Oh, that sounds like it was such a transformative experience. And you were chosen. You were anointed for that time, which is extremely powerful. And you continue to do more. And let me ask you, one of the questions that someone who might be considering missions work is the language barrier. And before I do that, before I go there, I want to shout out Tiffany, Patrice, James, thank you for tuning in live. We see you. We appreciate you. And if you're here watching live, please let us know. Patrice says you're amazing, Shamika. Ditto. Yes, Patrice, you're right about that. James Sherman says, Shamika, you rock. And that is true. Okay, but back to the questions. So language barriers. Okay, someone who might be considering doing missions work might be afraid to say, well, I don't speak the language. How can I do this? And so please share, was that something that was a concern of yours? And how did you navigate that?
Yes. So originally, that's a great question. Originally, I didn't think about the language barrier at all. I was a servant. I was going to do God's work. And so I knew he would work it out some way, shape, form, or fashion. But thank God for the translators and the interpreters, okay? They are alive and well. So if missions is something that you want to do, you ask that question, are we going to have any interpreters, any translators that will be there? But just go with an open heart and allow God to move through you, because I learned a lot about my gifts on these mission trips. When it came to the language barrier, that's when I found out I was an empath. So even though I didn't know their language, I can feel them. I connected with them internally, emotionally, and God just moved. And so there was this, there was a love language, right? That was there. That we all had the love for God, and just God just moved, and body language, right? Because I couldn't understand their language. The body language is what I really was able to learn. And so I watch people now to this day, because the body language speaks much louder than the voice.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Autumn, welcome, Autumn. You can still be a light and show God with a language barrier. Absolutely.
absolutely.
Absolutely. And so, Shamika, even with you being fed emotionally and spiritually through this work, I know this had to be physically, emotionally draining, spiritually sometimes. I mean, you talking about hiking 5-6 miles, Lord have mercy. So how did you stay encouraged and motivated when you felt drained, maybe when you were tired, or maybe you were missing home? What did you learn about how to manage that?
Yes, accountability. And so the people that I went on a trip with, I made sure to tell them, how I was feeling when I was feeling low. And we would meet. So like we went to Mexico, right? We would be out there from sun up to sundown. And so I will tell someone in the middle of the day, like I'm feeling drained, and we will all huddle together, pray, talk, encourage one another, and lift each other up so that we can keep going. And then at the end of the day, we will also pray and cover each other before we go to bed. And we'll ask each other about our highs and our lows for the day, so that we won't get caught up so much on the lows, right? And so that was just so much encouragement.
Man, that right there. So I
Mhm.
think this applies to anyone who's in ministry. They might not be doing missions work, but they might be working stateside in an area that's requiring for them to give of themselves. When we do ministry from a place of love and passion, oftentimes we pour out, but we do
Yeah,
need to be poured back into, and we do need to be covered. And it sounds like you
absolutely.
had people praying with you, encouraging you, helping you on those days where you felt tired.
Absolutely. Can I add this to
Yeah.
Reverend Jocelyn? 2 weeks before we went on a mission trip, we fast and prayed. We fast and prayed for 2 weeks before I think it was probably a month before that we literally fast and prayed, and made sure that our heart was right on the why we were going on this trip. And so when we got low, we asked each other again, what is your why? Why are you here? Right? Don't forget the why, what the mission is truly about.
That's good. And that's what keeps you, Shamika. I'm glad that you brought that up, because your why drives you. When you feel like quitting, when you feel like getting tired, you keep the people before you that you're called to serve. You keep the word that God gave you to
Yes.
fuel you when everything else seems like it's spent. So that's amazing advice. And
Yeah.
as you are watching live, those who are here, if you're new just tuning in, please let us know you're here. We want to know who's watching. We want to know what Shamika said that's blessing you. And definitely also you can throw out a question if you have it, and we can see if Miss White can answer that question for us. And so you transitioned, Shamika, from international ministries to doing work stateside, primarily with veterans. I would love to hear from you. How was that transition for you?
I had no idea. So that last mission trip, I broke a bone in my foot. And so while I did 7 mission trips back to back to back. And that last mission trip, I broke my foot, and I was so discouraged. I couldn't walk, right? I'm a mover and I'm a shaker. So now I can't move, right? And it's like, God, what is happening here? And so God literally gave me instructions on what was next. He did not give me the, but I stayed in prayer. I mean, I prayed earnestly, and I did not, I couldn't move, right? So I couldn't move. So I just laid there. And this is when God gave me pillow talk. because I was just laying there on my bed, laying on my pillow, and I was just talking to God. And for me, that was pillow talk. And in that pillow talk, God started to share with me and tell me what was next. Now, it wasn't clear that it was going to be female veterans, right? It was not clear. It was clear that it was going to be depression awareness, that I was going to talk with people who battle with depression. And so what he gave me was Blues Unveil. And I'm like, what is Blues Unveil? And blues means sad, sorrow, depression, and unveil means to uncover. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with that? And I was like, okay, like you give me 2 words. What does this mean? And it wasn't right away. But then I went into the bathroom and I heard, you're going to unveil one's blues, one story at a time. And I'm going to start with you. I said, oh my goodness. I said, well, you gonna start with me, huh? We got a story to tell. Okay. And so I started to write Shattered, my first book. That's when I began writing Shattered, because I didn't know when or where or when the opportunity was going to come for me to talk. I was just waiting for instructions from God. And so I ended up landing a job at Jesse Brown VA Medical Center. And great providers always look in the medical history. Okay. And so I'm scrolling through their medical history. And what I saw in common was that a lot of my patients had depression. That was a part of their medical history. And I was like, depression. God just was literally talking to me about this depression. I said, okay, where are we going to go with this? And every patient started coming in, depression, depression, depression. And so I started off with doing a veterans ball in 2015. And we did this, it was like almost 200 veterans in the Chicagoland area. We got together and we had a ball. We got down, we danced, and I enjoyed seeing them smile and seeing them happy, taking them out of their situations. And I wanted more. I was like, okay, God, what are we going to do next? And so they did a veterans author spotlight. And now this time I wrote the book. And so they highlighted me with my book and I started talking about this book. And then someone approached me and she said, you have a women's ministry in you. You have a story to tell. And I said, okay, God, I'm listening, I'm hearing. And it wasn't right away. And this is what I don't want people to think, that God was like, look, you're going to do this on Friday. And then Monday it happened and Tuesday it went down. No, it was weeks, it was months, it was years. And then it all started to come together. Right. And so it was something else I wanted to say, but it'll come back. But with this women's ministry, that's it. It was God's confirmation. God had confirmed his servants what he was already telling me. And that's what you want to wait for a confirmation if you're still fearful, like, okay, God, is this really you? And he will always confirm his word. And it was at 12-hour prayer in 2022. Okay, so I broke my foot in 2014. It wasn't to 2022 and 12-hour prayer where God said, now you're gonna launch. And I called New Life Covenant, and I called and spoke with the leadership there, and we were able to launch the veterans ministry there. Mm-hmm.
My goodness. Oh my, okay. There's so many. My mind is like overloaded right now with questions. And I see the chat as well. Sabrina's like, this is really good. And Autumn loves pillow talk, by the way.
Amen.
Seuss gives us a shout out right now. Thank you, Seuss. And so, okay. Couple things. So first, I love pillow talk as well. I have some questions about that, but I'm gonna move us forward. I think what really stood out to me was the fact that you first said that this happened over a period of time, like that this unfolded. And I also love how God gave you 2 words. And I know some of the people who are watching right now can relate to this, when God gives you a word or maybe 2, and you don't quite fully understand what these words or the word is about until God reveals. It's like God gives these breadcrumbs. And you're like, wait, what, God? I don't understand. And then, he just slowly reveals, and you're just like, this is why you God. Like, yes. This is why you God. Sabrina says 8 years later, God plays way too much sometimes. That's right. But this is this faith. We faith on the journey. We're walking this out, right, Shamika?
Yes.
And so all of this seemed to be kind of building up. Like nothing is wasted, right? So you had Blues Unveiled. He told you that you were first as it relates to the first story. You wrote your book out of obedience in the season. So you were ready for the next. And then over time, fast forward a couple of years later, now you're planted in your church, new life. And this opportunity arises where God tells you to approach the leadership to start this veterans ministry. I'm catching this, right? This is what took place. Okay.
Yes.
So for someone right now who is under a covering at a church home and God is putting something on their heart around a ministry to bring to their church, this is another chapter of your life where you had to propose this ministry to your pastor because you saw a need. I want you to spend a little bit of time there talking about like kind of how you approach this, and then what steps did you take to build this veterans ministry from the ground up at your church?
Yes. Good question. It was challenging, but it's nothing that I'd never done before, right? When I was in the military, I was a chaplain's assistant. I managed the church. We took care of the active duty. We took care of the spouses and some of the reservists. And so God was just reminding me of what was already in me, right? And so I called the church after 12-hour prayer. And let me go back a little bit because that was in 2022. 2020, I walked away from, I retired, right? And so I said, God, what's next? Because I knew like it couldn't have been over, right? It was much more to my story. And that's when I heard the veterans ministry. And so I called the church. They sent me to the leader that I was supposed to speak with. We sat down. I gave him all the instructions. In the military, we create a SOP, a standard of operation procedures. And so we created the standard of operation procedures on what this would look like, what the mission is, what the vision is, the why behind it, and why would this be impactful? How would this build the veterans in the ministry? And this is something that the veterans should be used to, right? On the base. If they had any issues, any problems, any more injury, anything, they came to the chaplain's office, right? And so I just imagine, and it was God's timing because I've been at the church for 18 years, right? 18 years I've been there, and that was really one of the questions, like, why now? Because it was God's timing. It wasn't on me, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just imagine the people who was the veterans who've been coming into the church wondering, how come we don't have a safe space inside the building, right? Where can we come together and amongst like-minded individuals? Because we can women in the military, we can go to a women's ministry, right? However, a lot of those women at the church have never experienced combat. They've never wore the uniform. They've never been waking up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning doing humps, right? They've never worked out in boots and utes, right? They've never shared a room with like 60 other women sharing like 4 or 5 bathrooms, okay? Right? They've never slept in the field. They've never been to war. So all of these questions, all of these things were coming to the forefront of my mind. Like, exactly, they've never experienced that. So even then, if a woman veteran joins the women's ministry, they can be inside of the group, but they'll still feel, alone. They'll still feel like they're by themselves because no one in that room will be relatable, or they won't know who exactly in the room is relatable. And so creating that veterans ministry, they know that everyone in this space understands exactly what they're going through. The night terrors, the nightmares, the PTSD episodes, right? Any and everything that we experience, MST. Okay. We can only have those type of conversation amongst like-minded individuals. So I had to present all of that, and it was good. They was like, let's do it.
Yes. And I appreciate that because you saw a need and you didn't just sit back and say, someone else should start a ministry. No, you're like, I'm the one. And I appreciate you accepting that. And I have a great question here that I want to bring up on the screen. This is from Autumn. She said, how did you stay patient in the waiting? Did God call you to write the book in the waiting?
Autumn, that is a great question. Absolutely. So this is what's so good during the wait. I broke my foot. So I was a mover and I was a shaker. So I could not move for 6 weeks. I was sat down. I was literally sat down for 6 weeks, and I can only move out an hour, 10 minutes. So I can get up for 10 minutes, use the bathroom, get something to eat. And I had to come right back and lay in that bed for 50 minutes because my foot had to be elevated. So that 6 weeks really turned things around for me, that I had to sit there. I had to study the word. I had to write down my thoughts. I had to pray, just pillow talk, right? So it had to happen. That was the turnaround point for me. So even during the wait period, I did different things. So in 2015, I did the Veterans Ball, right? So I met 200 veterans. And then I started doing retreats where I met other veterans. And so when I started this ministry at New Life, I had already built these relationships. I was doing different events. I did a comedy show, right? What else did I do? I think we did a cruise or something else we did. But I will always still interact with the veterans to get to know the people, to see what the need, what the concern was. And I noticed the missing link, which was Jesus. So I knew when I started that ministry, it was going to be impactful. It was something that they needed. We all need it. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And Autumn said, "Oh gosh, girl," laugh out loud. Yeah, you clearly are a mover and shaker. Patrice said earlier, "Amen" on that. I mean, Shamika, there's a lot of stuff that you have done, but I think one thing that for movers and shakers like us, because I'll be moving and shake, I'll be on
Yes, you do.
I'll be down the street. But sometimes God likes to sit us down for a second. And we be mad when he does a lot of times. We're like, no, I got this to do. I got this. But when you sit down, sometimes he got to put us in timeout because that's the only way that we can hear.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he said he'll leave the 99 to go after the one. He will leave the 99 to go after the one. And not saying that we were straying away from the flock, but it's like, I have more for you to do. I want to shift you. There's a shift that needs to take place. So I'm going to focus right in on you, but I got to sit you down to do it.
Sabrina says she would be big mad. And Autumn says she loved that. Yes. So just Shamika, looking back over everything that you've done, whether it's your missions work, whether it's starting your ministry at your church, what are some of your biggest takeaways, lessons learned from your journey?
Yes, that is such a great question. Mexico was like the boot camp mission trip. And so that is where the big transformation took place for me. I had literally had a heart transplant because growing up in the United States of America, it doesn't matter where you are living in the United States of America, we are spoiled. Okay. We are spoiled. And so I learned it was a humbling experience for me. And I have taken that spirit with me throughout my whole life since Mexico, because I can walk, we can walk in any room, hit a light switch, turn it on, turn it off, right? In Mexico, they didn't really have electricity. They just had this one line that went through their whole community. That light came on at a certain time, it went off at a certain time. Here and at home, we can choose if we want hot water or cold water. We're just changing the faucet, or if you have two faucets, you can just turn on the hot water, turn on the cold water, right? In Mexico, we literally had to pump the water from the well. And so a shower, there was no tub, there was no shower, right? So I had to wash up. If I wanted that water warm, I had to heat it up, which was outside over this fire, right? So they had to build the fire for me, pump the water. And when I saw how much work they had to do for me to have hot water, I said, don't even worry about this, right? Don't worry about it. And well, I mean, what else? The toilet system, right? We can just go into the bathroom, use the bathroom, flush the toilet. We had to pump the water from the well, take that bucket with us into this room where they had a toilet, and we used the washroom, we used that bathroom, and then you had to get that bucket of water and pour that water into the toilet so that it could flush, right? And it was such a humbling experience for me. I literally had a heart transplant, and I just was like, you know what, God, I have been taking life I've been taking it for granted, right? I am so rich. I repent. I repent for any time I've ever complained about anything. And that's when, Jocelyn, I told you, I came home and I went to Thursday night Bible study, and I literally kissed the ground. I
You
kissed
not
the ground.
figuratively, you like literally
No,
kissed the ground.
literally, I kissed the ground. I went to the altar. I fell to my knees and I went down and I kissed the ground. I kissed the ground. I didn't care who walked on it because guess what? Those shoes, our shoes, as much they didn't have shoes. These kids were
Wow.
walking around with no shoes on, right? And so I didn't care what would happen to me because it's a hospital up the street, right? I have friends that are doctors. I managed a clinic, right? And so I have access to so many things. But when I got out there, when I was in Mexico, oh my God, humbling experience and a heart transplant. And so I make sure that I maintain a teachable spirit because I showed up as like I was the gift for them. And they blessed me. So when I go into any space in any room, I'm not looking for how I can bless them. I'm looking for how they're going to bless me. And I know that God is putting me in this room for maybe an even exchange. We're going to bless each other. But I don't come in with a big head. It doesn't matter what room or space I'm in. I know that God is going to show up and teach me something, and I'm ready to receive it. So it has been just
That's
mind blowing.
amazing. That is
Mhm.
amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And that's just a reminder of us approaching life from a place of gratitude in everything that
Yes.
we're doing. And so that's a lesson learned. My final
Yes.
question for you is any person who's watching right now, particularly we know this show, we do the Impact Women to encourage women to answer their call to ministry. What words of encouragement would you extend to a sister who is looking to either start a ministry in their church, maybe start doing missions work, and they've kind of been on the fence? Maybe they've allowed fear to stand in the way. What would you offer them?
Yes, sister, if you are watching, I will absolutely tell you first to pray, right? First, pray and wait to hear from God. Because I've learned two things in life that we can have God's perfect will or we can have his permissive will. And his permissive will is not bad, but it's nothing compared to his perfect will, right? And so I will pray and wait till you hear God's perfect will. Write the vision, make it plain. Okay. Write the vision, make it plain. Ask for instructions. God gave Noah instructions. Ask for instructions, detail. God is a God of detail. Ask for detailed instructions and then make your call. Oh, and then I would absolutely have you to write down your why. Because when things get chaotic and confusing, right? Because the enemy is going to always do his job when you're doing God's work, right? Make sure you write your why so that you can always go back to this, right? Your why on why you're doing this ministry. And even when people try to uplift you, like, oh, look, Autumn is here. Oh, look, Patrice is here. You want to stay grounded on the why you are here. God is in the midst of this. Okay. And so I would definitely encourage you to do that and always wait for confirmation. If you're still fearful, wait for confirmation. God will always send a servant to confirm his word.
Mm. Oh, you just blessed us today, Shamika. I'm looking at the chat. People are like, this is so good. That's such a great testimony. Eye opening, perfect will. You
Yes.
got people with the perfect will. Thank you,
Amen.
Shamika, for your yes. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for your transparency. And just continue to be a force. You are truly an impact woman, Shamika. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. This is so good.
Yes, thank you. And you all in the chat, give her some love, show her some love. And I really hope that you were inspired by her. Shamika, you know I love you. You stay
I love
backstage for
you.
me.
Okay.
All right, you all. Well, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Impact Women. We just love to have these conversations with women such as Shamika, who said yes. And here's the thing. God is no respecter of individuals, of people. I mean, it's one of those things, just like he called me, just like he called Shamika, he's calling you, but he's not going to force you to say yes. And so that's the thing. That's the thing. He's waiting, open hand. He's calling you to your next. And when you say yes, it's going to require you to step outside your comfort zone. Because if we could do it in our own strength, we would just be all big headed and stuff. so, so the calling that God has for your life is going to be uncomfortable because it is God's size. You can't do it in your own strength. But here's the thing. You can have support. And let's talk about that. So here, women in the ministry, we love supporting women in answering their call. And so if you're looking for a community to support you on your journey. First, I encourage you to check out womenintheministry.com, sign up for our email list so you can get our weekly newsletter where we're sending you all types of resources to support you in answering your call to ministry. Also, I have a freebie for you. If you are really serious about starting your ministry, go ahead and visit sisterstartyourministry.com. There you'll find out information on how you can get my book along with a free ministry launch starter kit. In this kit, I have templates, resources, a bunch of tools to help you to start your ministry. You can get the ministry launch starter kit for free. Yes, for real, for free. So go to sisterstartyourministry.com to get your free ministry launch starter kit. So that is it, my dear sisters. And I think we got a couple brothers watching right now. Hey, brothers, we love you too. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you. We can't wait to see you next week for another episode of Impact Woman. But until then, you stay encouraged, you keep the faith, and continue to make impact. God bless. See you soon.